Right, my name is Allen Godefrey. I'm a retired police officer. I was served in the West Yorkshire Metropolitan Police here in England from 1975 to 1984, when in 1984 I had to retire through an injury on duty. Well, the close encounter took place on the 28th of November of 1980. Myself and fellow officers, 6 in total, witnessed a UFO. 3 of the officers worked in Halifax in West Yorkshire. 2 of the officers was in a town called Littleborough, which is in Greater Manchester, and myself was in a town called Todmorden, again in West Yorkshire. The incidents took place at approximately between 5 a.m. and 5:15 a.m. on that morning. The 3 police officers in Halifax, who were called PC Howard Turnpenny, PC's John Porter, and policewoman Julie Baxter. John Porter was the dog handler, and they had gone up onto the moors above Halifax to search for some stolen motorcycles. Whilst they're up there on the moors, a front had come in, a weather front had come in, so the very low thick cloud. When they became aware, below the cloud level was a large blue pulsating ball. It was doing movements, strange movements, not one would expect from a helicopter or an aeroplane of that description. So much so, the movements became so erratic that the police lady, Julie Baxter, got very distressed and got back into the police car. The dog handler, John Porter's dog, started barking loudly at this object, and there was something he sensed, perhaps. The object then came down and what we call buzzed, swooped down and above, and then headed off towards Todmorden. About 5 minutes later, 2 police officers, the names I have not got with me today, and I can't remember, they were in a different police force than ourselves, were sat up Blackshaw Head, which is a moorland road, in a public house car park called the White House. Sat there observing below them the town of Littleborough and Rochdale. When they became aware, they didn't see it actually appear. They saw it disappear, but they didn't actually became aware of it until it was actually there. They saw an object hovering between 2 pylons. So much so, they were both mesmerised by it. They reported this incident to their control room, and one of them did a sketch drawing of what they were witnessing. It was only there for several minutes when it shot off, again in the direction of Todmorden. At approximately 5 minutes later, which would be 5:10 a.m, I myself was in a police patrol car heading towards Burnley, a town called Burnley, on the A646. I looked up the main road which I was travelling on, and I saw about approximately 150 yards up in front of it an object. My first reaction was that it was a double-decker bus, but it was a split reaction. Nevertheless, I headed towards this object, and as I got close to it, I got within about 25 yards of the object, and what I saw quite baffled me. I thought one of these hot air balloons had come down. Then I thought, 5:10 in the morning, and I realised that this object was actually hovering off the ground. It wasn't. I could see under, as I'm sat in the police car, I could actually see under the object. And it was hovering about 5 feet off the ground. The span of it was taking much of the road up, so it was about 20 feet wide, because the road's pretty narrow just there. And over the top I could see the road lamps. So I'm estimating the height of the object was about 14 feet. And I'm sat about 25 yards looking at it. I put the blue lights on, headlights, hazard lights, anything you can think of. Because this was totally blocking the road. It was diamond in shape. It appeared to be in two halves joined together. The bottom half appeared to be rotating. The top half looked like it was stationary. And it also, I thought it had dark windows, panels, windows that went all the way around. That was my impression. But it could have been just dark panelling. But the first impression I had, there was like a limo has darkened windows. That's the impression I got, but it could have been panelling. I was absolutely gobsmacked. What really was worrying, well, not worrying, it's a strange saying worrying, but the bushes and the trees that line the road on this side, on the right-hand side, were shaking very, very violently, as though there was a strong wind blowing, but my car was perfectly stationary. I didn't feel any vibrations in the car. I didn't hear any noise. It wasn't emitting any noise that I could hear. I'm watching the object. I tried the UHF personal radio that all police officers carry on them. Well, they do in England. And I tried the car radio, which is on VHF. VHF is a video in VHF. And none of the frequencies I could get through to our control room. And when I was deciding what to do about it, I thought I'll pick we carry a pad, a clipboard with all this documents, to issue tickets and all this sort of stuff. And I decided to draw it. While I remember starting to draw it, I can't remember ever finishing the drawing, because at that time there was a large, bright, terribly bright, as though 1,000 photographers had all taken a photograph at the same time, and it was just pure brilliance. And you know that thing you get when you've had your photograph taken, you get that blackness. Well, when that blackness had gone, which only a matter of seconds, I was about 40, 50 yards further up the road, actually driving the police car. And if my memory serves me right, the blue light wasn't flashing, the hazard lights weren't flashing, and I didn't have my headlights on, although I was on dipped. I turned the car around, I went back to where this object had been, because it had gone. And on the floor of the road surface, and it had been raining all night. I mentioned the weather front earlier on, but it had stopped perhaps an hour earlier. But the road surface was wet through, but not where this object had been. There was a whirlpool dry surface. There was branches, and when I say branches, I don't mean massive branches. I'm talking, twig type, between a twig and a branch. What I did find interesting about, well, it wasn't interesting, but what I did realise, when this flash had happened, I've timed it, or we timed it, that I'd left the police station at 5 a.m. We're all agreed on that. I took a colleague down to the town centre, which is again is about 400 or 500 yards that way from the police station. I dropped him off. I had a very low conversation with him about he was going to check the shops in the town centre, and then turned the car around, drove back past the police station. Another 500 yards up the road, I come across this object. Perhaps there maybe a minute. A minute is a long time when you don't know what's going to happen to you. Believe you me. So maybe 2 minutes, but we'll stretch it to 5, shall we? So now we're about 5:10 There's a flash. I've turned the car around. I've had a quick look. Maybe another 5 minutes. Gone home But when I went to the police station, it was 5:50. That's why my colleague, who had only just dropped off, had done his patrol and was heading back because we all finished at 6 o'clock. He was heading back to the police station when I called him. There was definitely a large chunk of my life missing, Do
you recall anything from that interval?
No, it was 20 years ago. Even then, didn't even think about a UFO extraterrestrial, anything like that. It was just, what I was more concerned with, and believe this or not, that thing was blocking the road. It wasn't what it was, or where it had come from, the fact that it was blocking the road. That was my chief concern. I know it sounds silly now, but that's how I took the actual sighting. I didn't go, wow, this is a flying saucer, or wow, this is from somewhere from Star Trek or something. No, what the hell's this doing blocking the road? That was more important, because it's total nothing like an aircraft. You see, aircraft fly, don't they? Unless you're a jump jet. Now, this thing was actually hovering, and it was moving. And I suppose it comes in the classic UFO, unidentified flying object status, you know. But as time went on, and I became aware of the other police officers' sightings, it was a great relief to me. You can't imagine what a great relief that was to me, because you can understand being a policeman and my colleagues' reactions within that small community that we have. But when I found out about the 3 police officers in Halifax, and then months and months later about the 2 police officers in Greater Manchester, what a relief. I'm not crazy. I did see it. I told you I'd seen this. You know, you said I hadn't seen it. I'd imagined it, but I told you I'd seen something. And then there was 2 witnesses, civilian witnesses. There was a gentleman, he was a caretaker at the time, and he was the caretaker of a local high school, or it was a grammar school in those days. And he was walking across the schoolyard, which is on a hill, the road's down here. He saw an object come up, go to that side of the valley, move to that side of the valley, and did that all up the valley heading towards Burnley, which is the direction I was travelling. There was a format, believe this or believe it not, and I didn't know this, there was a format actually in our police station how to report a UFO sighting to the Ministry of Defence. And you send it on teleprinters, as we had in those days. So my report, together with the 3 police officers in Halifax, because we're the same division, same police force, our reports went to the Ministry of Defence within 24 hours. Certainly 48 hours, but certainly when I came on duty that night, I had to do a statement. I presume the other police officers did theirs at the same time. I know they did do them, because I spoke to them, but, and I will say, but certainly within 24, 48 hours, the Ministry of Defence in London received that report. And I do know that nearly 15, 18 years after the event, they deny ever receiving that report. Because a journalist who was writing a book, quite rightly wrote to the Ministry of Defence and asked if it would be possible to view the report of these police officers. It's been in the media, so it's not top secret. And the letter came back. He's published that letter in this book. I couldn't say the name of the book, Without Consent or something like it's called. And there, lo and behold, is the letter from the Ministry of Defence to this gentleman saying, although they've heard of Allen Godfrey's encounter and the police officer from West Yorkshire, blah, 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 we have no record of it. I was absolutely amazed at what happened after that. My life just turned upside down in an instant. From being a happy-go-lucky chap, within a space of 6 months, I would put through hell, and I turned into one of the most horrible persons you could ever imagine you come across, purely through harassment, stress, victimisation, you name it, I had it. It started very subtle, and it was things that more of an irritant than an annoyance, but it built up. And I can tell you, probably the best way of saying is to tell you 4 major things, but for every one major thing there was 20 minor things. I suddenly arrived at my place of work, and I was told I was being transferred 20, 30 miles away, 50 miles away, Wakefield. I was settled in my home, I was married, had 3 children, and the middle one had just been in hospital for about 12, 16 weeks with Perth's disease of his hip, and he was still in a wheelchair, and he would have been in, he's not now, but he was in a wheelchair at that time. My wife had just had his 3rd child, and I didn't want to go. I mean, there was no need. The second incident, I arrived back off holiday, and I found that I had been moved. That's from 9 o'clock that day, not to Wakefield, but to Halifax, which I could get to and still live in the same house, but it was very, very inconvenient. The fact was I hadn't got a car for a start off, and the shift pattern we work in the police would make it totally, virtually impossible to get there for parade duty at 5:45 in the morning. The first bus that left Tomberton wouldn't get you there for 5:45 in the morning, do you follow me? So I had to go, and I went. And instantly arriving at Halifax, I was taken out of the public domain. I was told I wasn't to mix with the public. I was in civvies, my colleagues in uniform. We arrived at Stanley Royal Hospital, and lo and behold, it isn't a general hospital at all, it's a psychiatric hospital. At this time I became very, very concerned. So much so that I said to my colleague, whatever you do, don't leave me here. Don't, if I have to go to be interviewed, you come in with me. And he was absolutely wonderful, because he was fully aware, with being an ex-colleague from the previous police station, what had been going on, all these other things that are too long to tell you about. So anyway, I went into this examination room, consultation room, call it what you like. 2 psychiatrists sat in front, and a lady sat over here taking notes. And they started off with the usual about your childhood and things like that. I won't go into all that, it'd take too long, but basically it soon became apparent to myself and my colleague that, well, especially when they came up with, we understand you hallucinate. I said, pardon? We understand that you a lot of hallucinations, and you've been seeing little green men and flying saucers. Well, I just hit the roof, and my colleague just, whoa, 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 he says, whoa, 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 whoa. Let me tell you something. I've seen one, and so have a lot of Alan's colleagues in Tomberton. And he named some, and he just sat there with the jaws down, What? And I said, what's all this about? This has gone on for an hour now. What's all this about? I thought I'd come here for a physical medical examination on this, and I told him what the injury was, because it was down in these regions. I said, no, I'm not injured up here. I said, this incident that you happened 2 years ago, nearly. 2 years ago, I told him the story then, very quickly. I said, it happened 2 years ago. I was working yesterday. I've got my own office in the cells. What's all? You're working? I said, of course I'm working. Now, I might be in civ, it's my day off. Well, we was told to check out your psychiatric stability, because they feel that you're not quite, whoa. I said, well, let me tell, I just leant across to that. I said, let me tell you something. When you are going home tonight, and you're in your car, and if you come across an object like I come across, what are you going to do about it then? I suppose you're going to ring the police up. I said, well, I was the policeman, and there's nobody I could back up, and when I wanted to back up, this is what's happening. And she knew I'd been transferred. And she says, Alan, what's all this about? What's that? About you being barred from police station. Pardon? She said, they're talking about it now. So I called them over, or I wandered over to them, and I knew him because I'd worked with him for years. And I said, whoa, what's happened? They thought I knew. And I said, no, what's that gone on? And he said, well, this afternoon, between the 6:02 shift finishing and the 2:10 shift starting, he got all the officers on parade together, the two shifts together. And the order was going to be read out at the night parade as well. And the order was that PC Allen Godfrey had been barred from entering Tomodon Police Station. He's not to be allowed in unless it's on official duty, and when he is in here, he's to be escorted everywhere he goes. And when they was asked why, what for, does he know, because it could be rather embarrassing for if Alan came in and he doesn't know about it. It'd be embarrassing for him, it'd be embarrassing for us. So why? Because things have been going missing, i.e. stolen. Now, I hadn't been in Tomodon Police Station since being transferred, bar once, when I had to go back on a court case I was involved in. I was livid. So much so, the following day, I demanded to see our divisional head. And I asked him if he knew about it. And he said, not officially, no. Now, this is the head of our division. Hasn't been officially told that I've been barred from a police station, although he had heard it on the golf course the previous day. I said, let me get this straight. Because you can imagine by this time, I got really, really pissed off with what was going on. I said, did you tell me this straight? Are you being serious with me that you, as head of this division, was totally unaware that one of your officers has been barred from one of your police stations by one of your underlings, and you don't know about it other than you heard it on the golf course yesterday? I said, who runs this division, you? And I mentioned the inspector's name and the sergeant's name who'd addressed the parade, you know. Straightforward enough question, isn't it? Who runs your division, you or these two? Well, I do. I said, well, but you don't know I've been barred. Well, who's give them authority? And this went on. So I threatened then, solicitor, issue writ. I'm now giving you notice that I'm fighting back, that the worm has turned. I've done everything you've asked me to do. I haven't spoken to the press about the UFOs, you know, the document I had to sign. I haven't spoken about Zygmunt Adamski. I haven't spoken to anybody. And yet you are persistently giving me grief. You've tried to have me certified. Oh, and he's backing back, you know. I said, well, the worm's now turned. Solicitor, later on today, down to Manchester, Queen's Court at Manchester, we'll have you in court. Chief, them two, defamation of character. I'll get the Federation to back us up. But me and the sergeant went down to my locker. And as I put the key in, the lock mechanism at the back dropped on the floor. And when we opened it up, where my hat had been, my flat cap had been, was contraband stuff that shouldn't have even been in the police station, never mind in my locker. Now, I can only presume that's what it was because I didn't test it. My first reaction was to get rid of it, which I duly did. Hindsight, did I do right? I don't know, but it was going out of my locker, and it went out of my locker and it went down the toilet and down the cells. Shaking, fear, as there isn't a word can describe how I felt. I can believe you me. I sweated, and I told Sergeant, the guy I picked up, you've got to back me on this, Jim. You've got to back me on this. You looked in my locker at 10 o'clock, there was nothing there. And said, I didn't even know anybody had been asking where it was. He was a bit panicky himself, you know. He said, this is getting hot. It's getting a bit, woo, you know. You watch your back, Alan, you know. Anyway, we managed to get home. We finished the tour that night. Went home at 6 in the morning. When we came back on the same day, if you like, back on as night duty, I was met as soon as we walked in the police station. Jim was with me. PC Godfrey, I was called to one side. It was our internal affairs, DI and a DS, Want to look in your locker? Well, I said, what for? Never mind what for. I want to look in your locker. We want you present there. You can have another officer present with you if you like. And I said, you coming with me, Jim? So we went down there. Of course, the lock was already on the floor. I left that. I just said, oh, the lock's broken. Thinking, if there is anything else in there that they've been back, at least the lock's broken, you know. And I acted surprised that the lock was broken, you know. So I kind of just, look lower where the locker thing had been, I just put it on like that. I said, oh, how that happened? And there was nothing there other than my uniform. They hadn't been back. And they was upset. Oh, were they upset? They was absolutely livid. And I said, what's the matter? You know, what are you looking for? You know, what am I supposed to have in here? You know? They said, you know when you were at Tomlin police station that you brought somebody else's helmet home, you picked somebody else's helmet up instead of yours because yours is at Tomlin, so you must have picked someone else's up. And we thought it was in your locker. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It needed internal affairs, did it, to come down with a quick phone call. Alan, can you go and check that you've got the right helmet and you haven't got to use it?
So the implication here is that they were attempting to frame you.
Mm. Well, there's an implication. That's what actually happened.
At Area 51, they have security within security, watching other people, their other security people, and it drives them up the wall too, and it drives the employees up the wall, and that's why they have a big exodus up there of some of the employees that work there. They can't stand the environment up there because you can't do anything. You can't talk to anybody. You can't.